Welcome to the Juiceable, a experimental show in meme reconstruction. Today we'll be looking at the Crucible, and we'll be reconstructing where the meme of the Crucible spawns from. Right. So first we'll be looking at the alchemical transformation of metals, or maybe just metallurgy, right? Non-alchemical as well, right? And looking at the device of the crucible itself, which is a cup that molds or is there to, receive the, metals as they're extracted, right? So it's a special type of material, right? Sometimes it's made of different materials like molybdenum and stuff that's extremely durable, right? And used to treat. Yeah. Go ahead, Zeph.
Graphite as well, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, graphite as well, right? So yeah, different materials that can withhold the heat in the smelting process, right? So it's clear that the fans of the Crucible with Android Wilson, right? They are sort of the elemental material that's being shaped within the Crucible. So their ideology, their ideological, um, you know, bearings are being accommodated to the process of this smelting, right? So the crucible is the container in which this process of smelting is happening, where they're sort of separating the wheat from the chaff, as it were, to use a biblical reference.
Yeah, right? Or it's like the purified metal from the slag. That's what it's called, slag.
Right. So let's take a look at this. Yes. So the fans are the slag, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good word for them. So let's take a look at this process here and see if we can glean anything from this video here.
What is crucible smelting? Have you ever wondered how ancient civilizations transformed raw ores into refined metals? One fascinating method they used is known as crucible smelting. This technique involves melting ores or metals inside a special container called a crucible. The crucible is made from materials that can withstand extremely high temperatures, allowing for the separation of metal from impurities. Crucible smelting provides precise control over temperature and atmosphere during the process. This results in a more refined and consistent metal product. Historically,
so they control the temperature in terms of when they're smelting the product, right? So the crucible is used to create the end product, right? So the heat and the aspects of the metal itself is being controlled. What the metal has to go through is being controlled. That's what the setting of the crucible is about. It's about controlling the setting so that the product can endure the appropriate amount of heat to create the extraction process, right?
Crucibles were often crafted from clay or other heat-resistant materials. The earliest examples of these crucibles date back to the 6th or 5th millennium before the Common Era in areas like Eastern Europe and Iran. During the Chalcolithic period, which is also known as the Copper Age, crucibles were primarily used for smelting copper and its alloys. These vessels were usually shallow and wide, often designed with handles or pouring spouts for easy handling of molten metal. The crucible's main role was to contain the ore in the hottest part of the furnace, allowing impurities to separate and enabling the metal to be shaped after the smelting process. As time went on, the technique of crucible smelting spread across various ancient civilizations. In Central Asia, particularly in what is now Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, crucible smelting was practiced as early as the 5th century before the Common Era. From there, this method.
Okay, so from this, I've gleaned that the process of smelting, removing the impurities, that's the ideologies that don't comport with the belief system that the crucible represents. So the impurities is the extraction of the stray ideologies. So the people are being smelted, their impurities are being removed. The vessel that's being used to remove their impurities is the crucible itself.
And I would say that, it's a vessel that is shallow and
right, exactly.
wide,
Right.
and wide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that tells us about this aspect of it. So the first aspect is about smelting of ore. Okay, let's move to another aspect, and this will be the military training exercise. Right? So the military training exercise called the Crucible. This is endured by the Marines, right? So this is important because the support for the state, right? The supporters of the Crucible, they're Christian conservatives and they're statists, right? They believe that you should reform the state, right? So they're extremely involved in the political framework, right? Even espousing lots of mainstream, political talking points,
Yes,
right?
it's the
Such as
culture war and its conquering of the culture.
right, exactly. So here we have this idea of the military training exercise. Now, what's interesting in this military training exercise is what you're really shaping and molding is the minds, right? It's not the body, right? So this military training exercise, that's a sort of statist project, is sort of molding the minds of the people that are involved. So just as the last example with the crucible, right, it's this high pressure situation to take out the impurities, right, which is the debates, right? So the military training exercise is this, you're going through this, testing your ideologies and opinions in this, sort of battle ground, so the crucible, either removing of impurities through the smelting process or this military training exercise, right? Removing the mental sort of hangups that cause you to be undisciplined in the face of battle, right? So there's the crucible military training exercise. Here's an example of this. So here.
The Marine Corps Crucible, a 54-hour event that tests physical stamina, mental toughness, and the ability to think critically while under extreme stress.
So physical stamina, mental toughness, and the ability to think critically. So 2 out of 3 of those are about the mental game and performance. They're not about physical performance.
And the stamina. Wow, that's a lot of hours that they are doing that. Yes.
Right. And that's even mental, because stamina is more about disciplining your mind to deal with the situations that your body encounters. Right. So this idea of stamina. So all of this is about mental toughness, which is really what the debate idea is about, right? Mental toughness, right? Imbuing mental toughness. One of the lines that they say, sort of like a military line, right? They say, "Not one step back." Right. So I think that might be a military training line or something like that, right? That they gained in the military, right? So yeah.
Forward progress always, right?
Right.
Yes. Mm.
Right. And that goes
At
with
all
the
costs.
ideology. Right.
Mhm.
Christian futurism, it's called, right? So he's adopted a talking point from Nick Fuentes about Christian futurism, right? So yeah, it's about looking forward, going into the future, taking the Christian ideology into the future, not one step back. And also the crucible, the idea of the crucible is about manufacturing, right? And technology, right? So yeah.
They apparently forgot the part about temperance.
Right. So yeah, so let's take a look at this.
The Crucible will help you keep in the mindset of being tired. Doesn't matter that you got to push on through it. That no matter how much pain you're in, the people next to you are also in that much pain. So you just got to keep pushing forward for them, not just yourself.
Broken down into squads, the recruit training platoon will face many obstacles that require not just physical strength, but teamwork, all while dealing with hunger, sleep deprivation, and physical exhaustion. Every event during the Crucible ties back to a Marine whose dedication to duty went above and beyond, like Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone or Corporal Jason Dunham, both of whom gave their lives in selfless service to their country and fellow Marines. Introduced by General Charles Krulak in 1996, the Crucible was designed to orient recruit training around realistic combat scenarios. The Crucible has evolved during the Iraq and Afghanistan.
So there's another thing. It's a simulation of real life battle situations. So
a virtual exercise.
Virtual exercise, virtual conflict, you know, a military operation, right?
And
all
it's a
of
LARP.
those, yeah,
It's a LARP.
right. It's a LARP, right? On top of it all, right? So, yeah, so all of those things apply here, right? Okay, let's move to the next piece of evidence, which is the Crucible, in terms of Arthur Miller, right? So here we have the book by Arthur Miller, right? It's a drama called The Crucible, right? So if you actually typed in The Crucible, the first thing that will come up is the movie, right, with Winona Ryder.
Oh, and it's a bad play. Oof.
Right. But in terms of the movie with Winona Ryder, it's interesting because she was part of the Satanic Panic, right? So she defended the Memphis 3, right? In the Satanic Panic, right? So it's pretty interesting because she's now on the show Stranger Things, and her son in the show Stranger Things was one of the kid had the same name as one of the kids that found up missing in the Memphis 3. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
It's pretty weird.
That was that Damien Eccles, or am I remembering that?
It was like one of the kids they supposedly kidnapped or whatever.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. His last name is Briars, the same name as Winona Ryder's son in Stranger Things. Right. So, yeah, so it's really weird connection. But yeah, so here's this Ouroboros tree.
Yep.
Right. It's like an Ouroboros. It's a tree eating another tree, like Ouroboros type of thing that a lantern is supposed to hang on.
Yeah, it's the tree of rebirth, I think. That would be the what is
Odin,
that? Is
right?
that yes, I think it's the
Yggdrasil,
ash.
right?
It's the ash tree, I think it's the ash tree.
Yeah, and here's the
For you, that's it. The yew tree.
Yeah, and here's the noose hanging from the tree, right? So it's popularly shown with a noose that's shaped like a blood drop hanging from a tree as well. So the tree is supposed to have a noose on it. So there's the the symbolism for witch hunt is in the logo, right? In this logo, right? So they're using this logo to symbolize the ideology of witch hunting, right? It's because they're Christian conservatives, right? So they're trying to be shocking, right, by saying they're going on a crusade, witch hunt, right, type of thing. So here is the Salem witch trials, right? And it's important to note that the Salem witch trials was sort of a psyop, right? That was created, sort of satanic panic that was created in that time, right, in order for a land grab. So here's an example of that.
The Salem witch trials stand as a dark and chilling chapter in American history. They represent a period of profound fear and inexplicable hysteria. This tragic episode continues to fascinate and horrify generations. Yet the trials were fueled by far more than just religious fervor and superstitious dread. Beneath the surface of sexual accusations lay deeper, more insidious forces at play. These forces were rooted in the very fabric of the community. Deep-seated social and economic tensions were significant, often overlooked factors. They provided fertile ground for suspicion and animosity to flourish. These underlying conflicts shaped the trajectory of the accusations. At the very heart of these tensions lay a bitter and enduring feud. This rivalry simmered for years, poisoning relationships and dividing the community. It was a conflict that would ultimately contribute to the unfolding tragedy. This feud involved two of Salem Village's most prominent and influential families. On one side stood the Putnams, a family with deep roots and strong ambitions. Opposing them were the Porters, equally powerful and fiercely independent. The rivalry between the Putnams and the Porters was deeply rooted in the history of Salem Village. It was not a sudden eruption, but a long-standing antagonism. Generations had inherited this animosity. The primary cause of this bitter contention was land disputes. As the village grew, competition for valuable agricultural land intensified. Boundaries were often ill-defined, leading to constant friction. These land claims were not merely about property. They represented wealth and future prosperity. Control over land meant economic power and social standing. It was a zero-sum game.
Okay, so you guys could look into that yourself, right?
And isn't it based on Jerusalem? Salem, Jerusalem?
Right, Jerusalem and Salem, right? It's interesting. They're fighting for sort of Jerusalem. They're fighting for the land, which is Jerusalem, right? So it's interesting, right? How that all seems to line up, you know what I mean, with a lot of other themes that we'll see here in a minute, right? It seems to line up with certain actors, right? That are controlled by certain powers, right? So we'll move to that. We'll move to guys like Roy Cohen and how they were associated with people like Joe McCarthy, who led the witch hunt, right? Actually, Arthur Miller wrote his book, The Crucible, about the witch hunt, right? That was led by Senator McCarthy, right? The Lavender Scare, right? He did a dual edge attack against gays and communists, right? And he said that gays and communists are a threat to Homeland Security, right? And then obviously they were also colluding with certain people who are gays and communists, right? So it's pretty interesting how they were using them as controlled opposition to gain political points, right? So they were using liberal factions to gain political talking points, right? So it's factionalism. It's not to draw unity or to draw to the issue, right? So we'll take an example of Senator Joe McCarthy, several examples of his, collusion, right, in that arena, and then his involvement with Roy Cohen, right, and then we'll look at Roy Cohen and how he mentored Donald Trump, and how the Crucible is a shill campaign for Donald Trump and Nick Fuentes and others. So we'll show some of that. So we'll move now to some video evidence of the Crucible connections. We're drawing wide connections, right, between Christian conservatism, right, the alt-right, Trump's mentor Roy Cohen, and sexual degenerates, right, and the possible link to the Crucible. So yeah, and this is the first episode. We're doing meme reconstruction of the Crucible. This is the Juiceable. Blessings to all the people. This is a pilot episode. We'll be breaking down several shows and looking at the memes that they employ and the content they use, and we'll be breaking down their potential goals and motives for them producing this kind of content.
And it's all in a name.
Right. It's all in the name, right?
It is still unclear exactly where McCarthy acquired the investment capital to make such investments. McCarthy's campaign funds came from out of state and amounted to 10 times that raised by his political opposition. Ironically, McCarthy benefited from a Communist Party vendetta against his opponent and helped him win the race. McCarthy ran a hawkish pro-military platform, adopting the moniker tail gunner, referring to his military service that assisted in creating a patriotic and no-nonsense persona.
So the key line here is this idea that he says here, this is worth 50,000 votes to me. So he knew that he was sort of, came in, McCarthy came into the fellow's hut waving a stack of clippings, quote, this is worth 50,000 votes to me, unquote, celebrating the creation of Tail Gunner Joe. So
he was
he's
a PR creation?
Yeah, it was a
Wow.
PR creation that so his military career was a PR creation. Okay, let's move to the next part of this, which I believe was what was the next timestamp? I think 31.
144, I think.
Or I think there was one at 131 too, right?
Oh, there's 131, 132, yes.
Okay, so let me play this one and then we'll move. Okay, so this part is the lavender scare. So this is how McCarthy falsified his military record, and then he used persecution of gays as a weapon, right? For political, for political conquest. So whenever he couldn't accuse, so there's examples of him saying that when somebody asked him, well, these guys aren't communists, he said yes, but they're homosexuals, right? So he would use that. If somebody wasn't if he couldn't accuse them of being a communist, he would accuse them of being a homosexual. So his accusations of gays sort of link up with his accusations of communists. So it's called
And
the
that
lavender scare, right?
was that because it was such a shameful thing, and so they thought it could be used against people, so they wouldn't let them be in positions of power? That's what it was, huh? It's like
Perhaps. I mean, yeah. I mean, at that time more so than today, for sure. But
yeah, that's how they were selling it, though, I think.
yeah, but it's going to become very interesting because Roy Cohn is a gay Jewish mobster, and he's involved. People like Roger Stone and Roy Cohn, they're involved in Epstein Island type of stuff. You know what I mean? So since they're actively honeypotting people with, like Roger Stone is actively honeypotting people with the Nexium cult or whatever. Roy Cohn is involved with Epstein. So it's interesting. So they're involved in the very same thing that they're accusing people of quite blatantly, right? So that's what's interesting.
It's all history repeating. Yes.
Right.
Scare. What is the lavender scare?
I describe it as a fear, right? A fear that permeated Cold War political culture. This fear that gay people were a threat to national security, that they had infiltrated the federal government, and that they needed to be systematically removed from government service.
The rooting out of homosexual employees became official policy with an executive order signed by newly elected President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1953. Between 5,000 and 10,000 people were fired or resigned, and we'll never know how many didn't pursue their dreams for fear of exposure. Other stories ended in the worst possible way. Drew Ference, the son of immigrants, spoke 5 languages and was serving in the U.S. Embassy in Paris when investigators confronted him with evidence that he was gay. Shortly after confessing, he killed himself.
Okay, and there's also the case of Hunt. So we'll go to that real quick, and then that's where we'll. So there's 2 examples of people that McCarthy drove to commit, what do you call it? Unaliving, right?
Yeah.
So we'll check that out.
Self-deletion.
Self-deletion,
Yeah.
exactly.
Control, Alt, Delete. That's what they're doing.
So let me pull this part up here. Here we go.
Now, in my sense of these things is that when that happened, when McCarthy made that announcement, though he felt he was innocent, he understood as well as anybody what it would mean to be dragged through a Joe McCarthy hearing and how much of your name would be smeared and your reputation ruined in September if he had just resigned from the Senate then. His son has been convicted. There have been all these threats about.
Yeah, McCarthy also had his son convicted of homosexuality. So it's pretty interesting. He must have had some friends in the Secret Service. Later, we find out that he actually had friends in the Secret Service, like J. Edgar Hoover, in which he could accomplish a lot of these indictments that he made of people.
Wow. So he was running it dirty.
The blackmail, and now he is looking ahead to a future where he's going to be a target of a McCarthy hearing. He's already announced he would not run for re-election. He pulled out of the race, but that wasn't enough for these people. They needed to get him out of the Senate now so that the control of the Senate could shift before the fall elections. And so my sense of it after getting to know Hunt through his letters and his diaries and his speeches is that that's the moment when he said, there's only one way out of this. And early the next morning, he took it. In my view, that was the end for Joe McCarthy. Just a few days before all of this happened were the Army McCarthy hearings that really started McCarthy's downfall and caused the public to begin to turn on McCarthy. But I think that when one of their own, a very popular colleague in the Senate, committed suicide, others had committed suicide as a result of Joe McCarthy. But when it was one of their own and a man as popular and well-liked as Hunt, I think that turned the tide solidly against McCarthy. And it was just a few months later that he was censured by the Senate and the end came for him.
McCarthy experienced a meteoric rise in national profile on February 9, 1950, when he gave a Lincoln Day speech to the Republican Women's Club of Wheeling, West Virginia. No recordings of the speech exist. However, it is generally agreed that he produced a piece of paper that he claimed contained a list of known communists working for the State Department. McCarthy is usually quoted to have said, quote, "The State Department is infested with communists. I have here in my hand a list of 205, a list of names that were made known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party, and who nevertheless are still working and shaping policy in the State Department," unquote. These sensationalist claims were picked up by the media and catapulted McCarthy into the limelight. The origin of the number 205 can be traced. In later debates on the Senate floor, McCarthy referred to a 1946 letter that then Secretary of State James Burns sent to Congressman Adolph J. Sabath. In that letter, Burns said State Department security investigations had resulted in, quote, recommendation against permanent employment, unquote, for 284 persons, and that 79 of these had been removed from their jobs. This left 205 still on the State Department's payroll. In fact, by the time of McCarthy's speech, only about 65 of the employees mentioned in the Burns letter were still with the State Department, and all of these had undergone further security checks.
Then toward the end of the talk, he made what was the key to the talk and what started him on the road to what became known as McCarthyism. And I want to read exactly the words from the newspaper. And what he said was, while I cannot take the time to name all the men in the State Department who have been named as members of the Communist Party and members of aspiring, I have here in my hand a list of 205, and he waved a piece of paper to the people, that were known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party, who nevertheless are still working and shaping the policy in the State Department. Now, anybody that had the sense to hear,
nothing is better than a partner that
I'll wait for this black lady to chop up this onion.
Onion, she got onion.
a terrific charge, because he was saying there were card-carrying communists in the State Department working as members of the American government, and the Secretary of State knew this, and they were still there.
So that's the shocking claim that he made, right? That the Secretary of State knows that these communists, because he had informed the Secretary of State about the list that he has, right? Even
So
though he changed,
complicit. That's complicity. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
so even though he changed his list of the numbers he had, and he didn't tell people who was on the list, he said he withheld the information, right? So
Well, then he went on. Of course, he continued his talk, and at the end, he said, well, now, it's a moral battle between good and evil. The chips are down. The chips are truly down. Kind of ended with that. And there were some questions and answers. He even invited the audience to talk to him. And there it lay. Now, WWBA, the local radio station, had carried his talk. One of the reporters from the Wheeling Intelligencer in the paper the next day had reported verbatim a lot of what he had said. When McCarthy was to go back to the airport, he was shown the paper, and the headline in the Wheeling paper was, McCarthy charges the Reds hold U.S. jobs. And they said he was tickled with the headline. And it was beginning to dawn on him he had something here. And he was set up.
okay, so now let's move to how McCarthy got the national attention, right? Because it's kind of weird how he garnered national attention with all these different claims that he made, right? So here is his connections to the FBI, actually, right? He had connections to J. Edgar Hoover, and actually, it may have been Hoover who introduced the Senator McCarthy to Roy Cohn, right? So let's see how Roy Cohn meets McCarthy through J. Edgar Hoover, right? Fascinating.
And had determined that there were, quote, incidents of inefficiencies, unquote, in the security reviews of 108 employees. McCarthy hid the source of his list, stating that he had penetrated the quote-unquote Iron Curtain of State Department secrecy with the aid of, quote, some good loyal Americans in the State Department, unquote. In reciting the information from the Lee List cases, McCarthy consistently exaggerated, representing the hearsay of witnesses as facts, and converting phrases such as, quote, inclined towards communism, unquote, to, quote, a communist, unquote. The source of the Lee List obtained by McCarthy could have come directly from his friend and FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover. The then 24-year-old Roy Cohn, prosecution member in the Rosenberg trial, was brought to the attention of Hoover, who recommended him to McCarthy. Cohn was subsequently appointed as his chief counsel. In response to McCarthy's charges, the Senate voted unanimously to investigate, and the Tidings Committee hearings were called. This was a subcommittee of the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, set up in February 1950 to conduct, quote, a full and complete study and investigation as to whether persons who are disloyal to the United States are or have been employed by the Department of State.
Okay. So we'll move now to the last part of this, right, which is the link between
So tasty?
that's an interesting image.
Neptune with his pitchfork. He don't need no spoon.
Yeah, it's funny how Shiva has the same trident.
Yeah. So does like there's a lot of that. There's also the caduceus, which a lot of times will be a staff, but it has the snakes and they look like a fork because they're two heads.
Right.
Yep.
From one who strongly identified as a Jew, but who felt that Jewish organizations.
So this is about Roy Cohn now. I mean,
Yeah,
so
and
let's check this out.
revolver.
Yeah, because he was actually a anti-Semitic Jew and a homophobic homosexual. So this is how he was described by people who were in his company regularly.
Cohn was described by Michael Cruz in Politico as, quote, a tangle of contradictions, a Jewish anti-Semite and a homosexual homophobe, vehemently closeted but insatiably promiscuous, unquote. Cohn's anti-Semitism and staunch anti-communism was portrayed as from one who strongly identified as a Jew, but who felt that Jewish organizations did not do enough to support those Jews who were advancing the fight against communism. Cohn was remembered by college friends as, quote, reacting almost violently to any Jew suspected of pro-communist leanings, unquote. A TV producer claimed that Cohn had said that, quote, although not all Jews are communists, but all communists are Jews, unquote. Cohn was also a member of the U.S. Department of Justice's prosecution team at the 1951 espionage trial of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Cohn's direct examination of Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, produced testimony that was central to the Rosenbergs' conviction and subsequent execution. On June 18, 1952, Cohn was awarded a plaque by the AJLAC for outstanding accomplishment in the cause of Americanism and his noteworthy devotion to the principles of Judaism. Cohn is pictured here receiving the award from Rabbi Benjamin Schultz alongside his parents, Judge and Mrs. Albert Cohn. Albert Cohn was a New York State Supreme Court justice. He was a powerful man that rubbed shoulders with the Jewish elites, particularly a group of influential Jews that included Jacob Schiff, Bernard Baruch, and Samuel Untermyer, who supported and had significant influence over the presidency.
By the way, if you guys don't know about Jacob Schiff and Samuel Untermyer, Samuel Untermyer is, responsible for the publishing of the Schofield Bible, right? That's why here he's seen linked to Cyrus Schofield, right? If you guys don't know about the Schofield Bible, it charges Christians with the sin of anti-Semitism, right? And says that they should wait for the Jews to set up Israel so that Jesus can come back, right? So it's an interesting document. Samuel Untermyer and Jacob Schiff were involved in the creation of Federal Reserve Bank, right? And Untermyer Park was where those satanic ceremonies were going on, where they sacrificed dogs and stuff. In New York, Henry Morgenthau,
Yep.
right, is another interesting name that's related to the establishment of the Federal Reserve, right? So it's interesting. So yeah, so they're linked to some pretty powerful people here,
And
right?
Fiorello LaGuardia. Isn't that like the
Right,
airport?
right.
Of Woodrow Wilson. Influence over the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. Albert himself was influential in Democratic Party politics, and it was New York Governor Herbert Lehman that promoted Albert to the New York Supreme Court. Albert was also president of B'nai B'rith's Rehoboth Lodge 38.
Yeah, if you're wondering what B'nai B'rith is or why they're in lodges, right, like Freemasonry, it's because it's the Jewish sect of Freemasonry, right? So B'nai B'rith is Freemasonry for Jews, right? So Roy Cohen's dad was greatly involved in that, right? So that might be linked to their sort of quote unquote Jewish anti-Semitism, right? Because sometimes some Jewish Freemasons are known to be self-hating Jews, such as Karl Marx and others, right? So So the American Jewish League against Communism is linked to B'nai B'rith, right? And also they're linked to the founding of the John Birch Society, right? So we're gonna look at that.
Roy Cohn and Bernard Baruch. Besides both of their links to the AJLAC and B'nai B'rith, the year before he died, Bernard Baruch gave Roy Cohn a character reference when Cohn was first being prosecuted for perjury and obstruction of justice. As mentioned earlier, Cohn caught the attention of J. Edgar Hoover during the Rosenberg trial. Hoover and Cohn maintained a relationship for over 20 years, exchanging Christmas gifts. The relationship adds fuel to the fire that Hoover himself was said to be homosexual. M. Wesley Swearingen, an FBI agent from 1951 to 1977, writes in his memoir, FBI Secrets and Agents Exposé, about the long-standing rumors within the Bureau concerning the relationship between Hoover and Associate Director Clyde Tolson, which include allegations that Hoover ignored the mafia for decades because they had sexual compromise material. Chasing ghosts or imaginary communists gave Hoover's FBI something to focus on while they turned a blind eye to mob activity. Interestingly, Cohn would later go on to represent mob boss Anthony Fat Tony Salerno when the FBI began cracking down on mob activity after Hoover died.
And that said Rupert Murdoch, didn't it? Ay, ay, ay. The big name.
Right. So these guys who were part of the American Jewish League Against Communism, they were also responsible in starting the John Birch Society, especially the three on the left, I believe, right? So they're Maury Riskind, Alfred Kohlberg, and Merwin K. Hart. They're connected to Roy Cohen. So so we'll move from that to this clip of Alex Jones. Oh, actually, we got that coming up. But yeah, we'll move to this clip of Gore Vidal, you know, versus Roy Cohen on Bill Boggs. So he's defending Joe McCarthy here in this interview. So here's just video evidence of the same thing, right?
They're sitting next to each other. They look like chums. There's been no conflict so far. I'd like to show you that Roy Cohen has miraculously come out with a book. He must type very quickly, called McCarthy, The Answer to Tail Gunner Joe, which was the NBC program. It was on when? The program was on February 6th. And the book is out now, and this is your answer to the book. What are you trying to do in this book in the broadest sense?
Well, I suppose 15, 20, 25 million people, Bill, saw this NBC film on the McCarthy period and on Senator McCarthy. The film was a lying, biased product. What I'm trying to do in
Specifically,
this book,
what were some of the lies?
well, quickly.
So the film was saying exactly what it was proven in that show that we showed, that McCarthy falsified his military record. He just went out there, shot coconuts. Right. Anyways, you guys could look at that interview for yourself. But yeah,
It was a created avatar for his LARP.
Right. Right. So he lied about Joe McCarthy's military record live, right? So he told all these lies to defend this guy, right, who created all these lies about other people, right? So anyways, here's some other information right here. I'm only going to read a little bit of this, right, until we get to the part about Roy Cohen, right? This is by Whitney Webb. She says, as billionaire pedophile and alleged sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein sits in prison, reports have continued to surface about his reported links to intelligence, his financial ties to several companies and charitable foundations, his friendships with rich and powerful, as well as top politicians. Right? She says the mega group's role, right? The pro-Israel philanthropist faction known as the mega group, right? And the ties to U.S. intelligence, right? That ties to Israeli secret intelligence, right? Garnered some attention, right? As Epstein's main financial patron for decades, billionaire Leslie Wexner was co-founder of that group that unites several well-known businessmen with penchant for pro-Israel and ethno-philanthropy, i.e. philanthropy benefiting the single ethnic or ethno-religious group. However, as this report will show, another uniting factor among mega group members is deep ties to organized crime, specifically the organized crime network, which was largely led by notorious American mobster Meyer Lansky. Okay, so Trump is linked to Meyer Lansky, right, and his crime network, right, and certain of the mob boss families, as we just showed in that video, right. Cohen was representative of some of those mob families, right? By virtue of the role of many mega group members as major political donors in both U.S. and Israel, several of its most notable members have close ties to the government of both countries as well as intelligence communities. As this report and a subsequent report will show, the mega group also has close ties to two businessmen who worked for Israel's Mossad, Robert Maxwell and Mark Rich. One of the businessmen working for the Mossad, Robert Maxwell, will be discussed. Right, Maxwell, who was a business partner of mega group co-founder Charles Bronfman, aided the successful Mossad plot to plant a trapdoor in U.S. created software that was then sold to governments and companies throughout the world.
A backdoor, yes.
Yeah. That plot's success was largely due to the role of a close associate of then President Ronald Reagan, an American politician close to Maxwell, who later helped aid Reagan in the cover-up of Iran-Contra scandal. Years later, Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, would join Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle at the same time. Epstein was bankrolling a similar software program, now being marketed for critical electronic infrastructure in the U.S. and abroad. That company has deep and troubling connections to Israeli military intelligence, associates of the Trump administration, and the mega group. Epstein appears to have ties to Israeli intelligence and has well-documented ties to influential Israeli politicians and the mega group. Yet those entities are not isolated in and of themselves. And she says, as many also connect to organized crime network and powerful alleged PDFs discussed in previous installments of this series. Perhaps the best illustration of how the connections between many of these players often meld together can be seen in Ronald Lauder, a mega group member, former member of Ronald Reagan administration, longtime donor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's Likud party, and longtime friend of Donald Trump and Roy Cohen. So here's enter Roy Cohen. So here enters Roy Cohen. One often overlooked yet client friend of Roy Cohen is billionaire heir to Estee Lauder Cosmetics fortune Ronald Lauder. Lauder is often described in the press as a leading Jewish philanthropist and is the president of the World Jewish Congress. In a statement given by Lauder to New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman in 2018, the cosmetics heir noted that he was known that he has known Trump for 50 years. Going at least 1970. According to Lauder, his relationship with Trump began when Trump was a student of Wharton School in University of Pennsylvania. Yeah, Wharton. In the University of Pennsylvania. Though the exact nature of the early friendship is unclear, it is evident that that they shared many of the same connections, including to the man who would later count them both as clients, Roy Cohen. So I'm gonna skip a little bit of this, but it says here, it says 2 years later in 1983, Ronald Lauder, whose only professional experience at that point was working for his parents' cosmetic company, was appointed to serve as United States Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO affairs. Soon after his appointment, he served in the Dinner Tribute Committee for a dinner hosted by the Jewish fraternal and strongly pro-Israel organization B'nai B'rith, the parent organization of the controversial Anti-Defamation League. In Roy Cohen's honor, Cohen's influential father, Albert Cohen, was longtime president of B'nai B'rith. So there's another source for that with the Whitney Webb article, right? Roy Cohen himself was a member of B'nai B'rith's Banking and Finance Lodge. So this is Trump's mentor, by the way. Okay, so let's move forward with that. So some information about Trump's mentor. Here is Alex Jones, right? Now we saw that the American Jewish League Against Communism had roots in the group, the John Birch Society. Here's Alex Jones saying that everybody should join the John Birch Society. Let's check it out.
So you understand where the John Birch Society came from when these enemies of liberty just demonize them and say lies about them with no proof. Understand why? Because they know it's a real organization trying to defend this republic. And without them, folks, Ron Paul and myself, we would not have known all this info. I'm telling you, they were the launch pad for the entire giant resistance today. And everybody should be a part of the John Birch Society, or at least get their materials, because they're the best you're going to find anywhere.
Wow.
And here is Alex Jones protesting at January 6th alongside Jay Dyer, who is a philosophical mentor for the Crucible, right? And made by Jim Bob, right? So here's them at January 6th protesting with the crowds at the totally fake rigged event there. So let's check this out.
He doesn't speak with them because he doesn't believe what he's saying. There's Alex Jones to his left, right here. Here's Jay. Listen.
There is a big spot watching us right now.
This was during the rally back in, I think, early 2021. Or, I'm sorry, this is November 2020. Sorry.
The dystopia is now. It's not coming. They're trying to bring it in. Justin Trudeau said this is an excuse. Klaus Schwab says it is an excuse.
Thanks, Canada.
This is everyone sees through it. We see the bullshit. one's buying it. No one's
Gotta
buying
dump
it.
that.
No one's buying it.
Oh, you can say that word.
No one's buying it. 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 You will not buy it.
You are such a weak
You will
chant.
not get a new
Wow.
world order. You will not get what you're after. We know. America forever! It's water! America first!
There he is. Okay, so there's Jay, there's Alex Jones, and there's Nick Fuentes right there. Okay, so make no mistake, Jay is shoulder to shoulder in public political activism with Alex Jones and with Nick Fuentes. There is no mistaking this. He is in covenant with these men. So I don't want to hear any bullshit that the connections that I'm making between these men is cursory or general. It is direct.
Okay, so there's that. Now here is Rachel Wilson tweeting at Nick Fuentes that she is saying that the Bears support Nick Fuentes. So not only is she in the Bears, right, and there's proof that she has a bear name called Rachie Mama Grizz. So she's so she's in the Bears, tweeting at Nick Fuentes, saying that she's also a member of Knicker Nation, which is I'm
Knickers or panties? I guess
yeah,
she's like,
I'm assuming it's some right.
Yeah, that's not very. I wonder if they're the bloomers. No, those are bloomers, not knickers. Those are not knickers. And maybe
Right.
it's like it's Nick Fuentes knickers.
Right. It says replying to Nick J. Fuentes, Knicker Nation, the Bears support you. So she's tweeting at Nick Fuentes saying that the Bears support her. Nick
And
Fuentes.
Owen.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So she's not only a part of the Bears, she's also a part of so here's
Not the
her
good
other
one.
yeah, she's also a part of Nick Fuentes' organization early on, right? So she's a part of those same groups. Right, it says here it's Rachel, aka Grizzly Mama, trying to move away from using Grizzly for obvious reasons. Okay, so there's her exiting the Owen Benjamin cult, right? That she was once a part of. So here is Andrew Wilson supporting the sexual degeneracy of Trump. Right, he is here supporting, saying that Trump doesn't grape people; that it's actually Bill Clinton who grapes people, and we'll show why that's actually asinine.
Pretty relevant. Yeah, it's relevant for him to say that.
Right, it's very relevant. Right? So yeah,
Quite telling.
Quite telling, right?
Yeah, breaking news.
Yeah, so let's watch example of this.
I have a question for you, to the Kamala Harris supporters. So, can you explain something to me? So, Democrats are constantly whining and complaining about Trump being immoral because cheating on wives and things like this. But how come no Democrats said anything about Clinton getting a blowjob from Monica Lewinsky in the White House? Literally while he's married to Hillary Clinton, in the office of president, he was actually doing this, and they didn't care.
Two reasons. This is not that presidency. So there's running Trump and Kamala Harris.
So this is so great, right? He's defending Trump's sexual degeneracy by accusing Clinton, right? So he's a total shill for Trump.
Yeah.
He's dressed like a clown.
He's whataboutism.
Yeah, he's dressed like a fucking clown. He's also making fun of this woman. This couldn't be a crazier clip, right? Why would he defend Trump's sexual, proclivities, right? Like, what's the point of that, right?
Well, and he looks like he's like the ringmaster of the zombie circus or something, but it's not even done well. It's ridiculous. The top hat is nice, but yeah.
So his complaint is about Trump and Clinton. Let's watch this video here.
Sir, on your response to the Epstein emails that mention your name?
Covering news and politics for 10 years, there really isn't a whole lot that stuns me anymore. But there is this email from the Jeffrey Epstein files that is really making me wonder, who is Bubba and what did Trump do to Bubba?
Hubba bubba.
To that email, including a response from one of the individuals in that email chain, which makes me think there's actually more to this than people might think. So let me first start with what's gone on up to this point, and that is the fact that 20,000 pages of documents from the Epstein files have been released. Emails including a message which Epstein asserts Donald Trump, quote, knew about the girls, which CNN appears to think is a reference to Trump's claim that he kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club for poaching young women who worked there, or it could just mean that Trump knew what Epstein was doing. Trump, or I should say, Epstein also wrote, quote, I know how dirty Donald is.
Oh my goodness. I think I want to tease for the next something to tease for the next episode too at the end as well. So pause on that. Keep going. It's riveting stuff.
Whoops, sorry about that. Here, hold on.
That was fine.
It crashed out here.
I didn't even notice the commercial. I was thinking because I needed a little pause there. That was pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why this isn't. All right, this.
In another of the messages from 2011, Epstein told his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, that Trump is the, quote, dog that hasn't barked because he'd spent time with someone whose name is redacted as victim.
Wow.
So CNN reviewed thousands of pages where they say Epstein repeatedly invoked Trump, sometimes to offer analysis of his behavior, sometimes to gossip, and sometimes simply to position himself as someone with rare insight into the man who had become president. That gets to this. Internet erupts over Mark Epstein email on Trump, Putin, and Bubba. So Mark Epstein is Jeffrey Epstein's brother. Here is the email. That is quite something. So, of course, email chain, I'll read in a reverse order here. But Mark writes, how are you doing? A while back, you mentioned that you were pre-diabetic. Has anything changed with that? What is your boy Donald up to now? Epstein responds, saying, all good. Bannon with me. His brother Mark responds, ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba. Let me stop there. What photos? Who's Bubba? And Trump blew him? Now,
it sounds like an animal. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know why.
Where do I go from here?
Right.
Some may think, hey, he's joking about something, just making a joke. But he's writing this as if there are actual photos, the photos. Like the part that maybe if there's a joke here, maybe the joke is, oh, does Putin have those photos? But the photos appear to exist in this. It's not like there's something to this comment. There's something behind this. Joke or not, there is something to this. What are these photos? Who is Bubba? Why did Trump blow him? And the response from Jeffrey Epstein says, and I thought I had, this is apparently a Yiddish word for issues. So I thought I had issues. Then Mark replies saying, you and your boy Donnie can make a remake of the movie Get Hard.
What?
So apparently Epstein also had a picture of Clinton in a blue dress, the Monica Lewinsky dress, right? So
Had
this
to
is
have been not
things that they had.
reproduction or something, because I think Monica had that dress still. It had to have been like a similar dress. But yeah, wow. That I don't really care about that much, really. I mean, that part, it's not that scandalous, I don't think. But wow. Because everybody knows how much of a dog Clinton was. But that is interesting. With
Right. And
Trump
then
and Putin.
and then the last thing we have is Ali Alexander, right, who in Stop the Steal, right, he basically became somebody who was gay texting with people trying to groom young men. And of course, there's the famous case of the Crucible being connected with the gay porn star Marte Raylis, and also the masturbator speakeasy right?
Yeah,
Who was
and
caught
they do
sending
whatever. All those girls they pay to humiliate them,
right on the whatever show, right? It could
Mhm.
be it's interesting because they're talking about sexual degeneracy, but he's connected to the whatever show,
Well,
right? Where
that's so
they
he can
promote,
virtue signal or something, I think.
right? That's pretty much it. Did you have anything, Zeph? Before we close
Um,
this one out.
did want to say something. If anyone like of Ann Derp's cult like didn't catch it, you should definitely do a little bit of research and find out what your leader how he really feels, because he was basically he was really mad. He got big mad. He was throwing back all the whiskey shots and playing his power daddy role, I guess King Anderp or whatever, to to his flock. And he said, and I quote, "No, you punch left." And I think he was talking to basically that's like basically a declaration of his rules of loyalty and what he demands. And he said, "And when we win this culture war, then you can punch right." And that's like he just said it out loud. Oops. So yeah, he's it's his true disposition to loyalty, and that's to himself and his interests. So obviously, if anyone that follows him is confused about that now, they should really, unless they'd rather be like naive and in denial, because he said it, and it's like he's not gonna do anything for you. If it comes down to it, he'll choose him. He kind of blew it, my opinion. But that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
I
wild stuff.
yeah. I
Yeah,
still
Trump, Cohen, Epstein, the Crucible, right? The origin of the meme itself, and
it's falling
yeah,
apart again.
yeah, and the Christian conservatism that goes with it, the John Birch Society, right? And Alex Jones, right? And of course, Jay Dyer, right? So we'll look into more of these figures. Thank you guys for joining us here on the Juiceable. This is the pilot run. And yeah, so we'll do more meme reconstruction later with you guys. Blessings.
And remember, the Crucible was originally a really bad play. And
Right.
it still is, apparently.
Right. Is it a gay Nazi psyop thing?
Or
Started by a
sandwich.
gay Jewish mobster, right? They're the honeypot people. I mean the question remains. But yeah, this is an interesting excursion into where the meme originates. The Crucible, the witch hunt.
Very juicy.
Yeah, blessings.
rubbish deeds. Oh, well you just wait, they'll find you next. And when they do, they'll put you in the ASPCA, you mangy heart. And they're coming to take me away. Ah, they're coming to take me away. Ho ho, hee hee, ha ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see them nice and minute and eat my folks, and they're coming to take me away. Ha ha. To the happy home with trees and flowers and chirping birds and basket weavers who see smiling through their thumbs and toes, and they're coming to take me away. Ha 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 ha. To me, monogamy's the way we both must live or you'll feel hurt. But as soon as you get someone new, your anxious poly purebred code was gone. Even at our place, I paid the rent. Thanks, they're coming to take me away.